Today we're going to hear from national leaders, and we're also, as Dr. DiPietro says, going to have a conversation. And one of the most important things and exciting things is we're going to hear from each other. We're going to hear about what's happening on our campuses. We will be doing that by presentations and by posters. So please, during the day, look at the posters. They're very, very exciting. Some of the posters are here. Some of the posters are in the hall. So please take advantage of those presentations in addition to those that will be presented orally to you. So let us begin. It is my immense pleasure to introduce the summit's first speaker, Dr. Lendley Black, Chancellor of the University of Minnesota, Duluth, to talk with us about making diversity really matter. And when you look at the program, you see Chancellor Black's bio, and I will read it with you. Chancellor Black joined the University of Minnesota Duluth as Chancellor in August 2010. Previously, he served as Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs at Kennesaw State University in Georgia. He was Dean of the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences at Emporia State University in Kansas for 9 years. He earned his doctorate in theater at the University of Kansas. When you look at the University of Minnesota Duluth campus climate webpage, Chancellor Black writes, "When I joined the University of Minnesota Duluth community in August of 2010, I announced a major campus initiative to create an inclusive campus climate for all who learn and work at UMD. Hence, one of the goals of UMD's strategic plan is to create a positive and inclusive campus climate for all by advancing equity, diversity, and social justice." Welcome, Chancellor Black.
Thank you very much, Dean Anderson. I appreciate the kind introduction. Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning. It's always a good morning when I can come back to my home state, because I'm going to add a little bit to the bio that you read. I've not lived in Tennessee for many years now, but it still feels like home when I return. My home is now in Minnesota, as you've heard. On this slide, there's a picture of a double rainbow over Lake Superior. This is just a few miles up the shore from our campus. Does not look like Martin, Tennessee. Although Martin is awfully nice, and I'll mention that in a minute. We are one of 5 campuses of the University of Minnesota system, so our system does share some characteristics with Tennessee. UMD has approximately 11,200 students, about 1,800 faculty and staff. We are located on the banks of Lake Superior, the greatest of the Great Lakes. 10% of the Earth's fresh water is located in Lake Superior. Duluth is a fairly progressive community of about 86,000 and part of a metropolitan area around 200,000. We are a tourist community, 12 months out of the year, if you can believe that, with a strong focus on higher education. Within our metropolitan area, we have 2 public universities, a private college, and a number of community colleges and tribal colleges. Our Dean Anderson quoted from our Campus Change website, and that is the URL that's on the slide here. So if you want to learn more about us, I encourage you to visit and see what all we're up to. As you heard, prior to moving to Duluth, I was provost and academic vice president at Kennesaw State, not too far from here, and then spent many years in Kansas. After I received my doctorate at the University of Kansas, I worked there and at Emporia State University, which is a regional university in Kansas. We did a lot of diversity work there, and I continue that diversity work at Kennesaw State. But what's not listed in my bio is that, yes, I have a doctorate from the University of Kansas, I have a master's from the University of Connecticut, but I have a Bachelor of Arts degree in English from the University of Tennessee, Martin. I didn't change that on the written bio. I wanted to announce that personally. I did grow up in Memphis. My wife grew up in Nashville. Let's hear it for Memphis. My wife grew up in Nashville. We met as students at UTM, and this summer we celebrate our 40th wedding anniversary. So there was a focus on student success at UTM, too many initials, UTM, that has served my personal life well as my professional life. But in all seriousness, I received an outstanding liberal arts education at Martin, and it served me extremely well when I went from Martin to UConn as a graduate student. I was working with graduate students who were from Princeton and Brown and SMU, and I certainly was able to hold my own as a result of the education I got at UTM. So I am very, very much thankful for that. As I mentioned, I grew up in Memphis, a very segregated neighborhood in what was then called East Memphis. Now, East Memphis goes way beyond where I grew up. And I was in Overton High School in Memphis in the late 1960s, when Memphis became one of the focal points of the civil rights movement. I remember very clearly the sanitation worker strike and all the events that led up to Dr. Martin Luther King coming to Memphis to march and to stand up for those who were disadvantaged. This was also obviously when Dr. King was murdered, and when his death resulted in violence, not only in Memphis, but in many major cities across the country. And these events and the violence and the aftermath, I think, really changed these cities in significant ways. Some for the better, some not, but certainly we were different. You could feel a difference after those events. And while growing up in Memphis, I vividly remember both the subtle as well as the very glaring manifestations of segregation, of misunderstanding, of ignorance, and of power. Now, I grew up in a very loving and modest family. My parents were from very hardworking farm families in West Tennessee and northern Mississippi. My father was wounded in World War II and had to stop working in his 30s, and he passed away when he was 49. So financially, we struggled. My mother had to go to work at a fairly young age. This was in the early 60s at this point. My dad did not want her to go to work because women weren't supposed to do that sort of thing, according to him. But she had no choice. And I started throwing the morning paper, the Memphis Commercial Appeal, as soon as I was old enough. I think I started at 14. Would ride my bicycle, get up early, and now a young person riding their bicycle in Memphis at 5 o'clock in the morning just doesn't sound right. But at that time, that's what we did. But in spite of these life challenges, I grew up in a family with many advantages or privileges. Now, it's always been a little difficult for me to talk about privilege because I certainly did not feel privileged growing up. We were not privileged in our economic status, certainly. We were not privileged in elite education. Neither of my parents went to college. I have an older sister, and she went to Martin. She's 3 years older than I am, so she was already there, and that was one of the reasons I followed her there. But my parents were still smart and wise people, but they were not highly educated. But it took me many years to sort of understand and come to terms with this whole aspect of privilege and advantages that I had simply because of the color of my skin, because I was healthy, I'm able-bodied, I'm male, I'm heterosexual. Some might consider being Protestant an advantage. Of Of course, right now I'm a Lutheran in Minnesota, and you don't get much more majority than that. So, during my first month at UMD, I spoke openly on campus about my privilege. And I told a version of this story to a group of people my first week or so at UMD. Now, this was uncomfortable in some ways for me and for others, because the whole topic of white privilege has taken on so many negatives and confrontations over the past several years that it's risky to even open the discussion. However, as Alan Johnson states in his book, Privilege, Power, Indifference, you can't deal with a problem if you don't name it. Once you name it, you can think about it, you can write about it, you can make sense of it by seeing how it's connected to other things that explain it and point toward solutions. Hence, Johnson advocates the use of the words like privilege, racism, sexism, anti-Semitism, heterosexism, classism, ableism, dominance, subordination, oppression, patriarchy, in order to work towards solving the challenges we all have with difference and better understanding those who have been disadvantaged. So if diversity is going to really matter, it must begin with us. And we must all come to terms with the challenges that each of us has and continues to have with difference. We have to know individually where we are in our own biases, in what steps we are willing to take to advance to the next level of intercultural understanding and engagement with people who are different from us. So I began this morning by telling you something about myself because we need to understand the individual stories that we all work with. If we better understand where people come from and how they come to be where they are now, we are better able to connect with them and work with them on a deeper level. You know, it's much harder to hate someone or to display unacceptable behavior towards someone if you understand who they really are. Now, in some ways, I credit my theater and humanities studies, which began at Martin, and also the research and teaching I did as a faculty member. My research area was Russian theater and drama when I was a full-time faculty member. But I credit this academic perspective with some of my interest in diversity, because in those areas we were centered on, in the humanities and in the theater, we're very much centered on understanding what it's like to be human. And also, especially in the theater, trying to get under the skin of people who are very different from ourselves. So I could argue that English and theater majors connect with diversity in significant ways. Could also argue they make the best college administrators. When I became chancellor at UMD in August, in August of 2010, the campus needed a stronger focus on diversity, and it needed a process to confront and move beyond a racist incident that had occurred the previous spring. In the spring of 2010, 2 white female students laughed at and made racist comments about 2 African American students on the UMD campus in their residence hall, and they posted the insulting and racist comments on Facebook. So you know what happened. It spread very quickly, became an extremely controversial issue on campus. Now, from what I could tell, the campus had responded well and appropriately and really supported the African American students. However, the incident left a residue of hurt feelings and a desire to improve the overall climate on campus. So during my first weeks at UMD, I felt the urgency that your president just talked about, the immediacy that we had a reason to act quickly. And there was some energy, and the time was right, I thought, to take a big step. So we organized a 2-day training on creating an inclusive campus climate, with faculty, staff, administrators, and students. I began the training by talking about my own experiences and commitment to diversity. And this training was facilitated by Kathy O'Bear and Jamie Washington from the Social Justice Training Institute. So from this effort, we developed the UMD Campus Climate Initiative that consisted of a renewed campus commitment and a new structure that would facilitate sustainable change. And to me, it was critical that we had sustainable change, a commitment to sustainable change. I was not interested in talking about diversity. I wasn't interested in just having a generic diversity program. We needed something that could be impactful and sustainable. So the objective of this campus climate work was captured in our campus commitment. There we go. Sometimes I have the tendency, as others do, to point this toward the screen, like it's going to do us some good. But we got it right over here. So we developed a campus commitment that provided an intellectual foundation for the work we were going to do. And this is sort of in 3 segments, and I won't read it all to you, but I'll go over it quickly, and then we can come back to it later. Or, like I said, you can go to our website and read about it in more detail. But part of the purpose was an integration of equity, diversity, inclusion, social justice. We also were focusing on campus life, the totality of campus life, the academic areas as well as our student life areas. And we wanted to be intentional in the work. We wanted to create an environment that is both physically and psychologically safe. It's that safety factor that I find concerns our students the most. And as we do a variety of focus groups with our students who have been disadvantaged, what I hear over and over again is them say, I need to feel safe. We also wanted to eliminate both structural and interpersonal barriers that would limit the opportunities of our students, that would keep them from reaching their full potential. We also said in this commitment statement that we recognize and understand that people have been marginalized. And to us, it was important to admit that. And sometimes we dance around these issues too much. Instead of coming out and saying, we got a problem here, folks. And it's not, the problems we have in Duluth, they're different from what I saw in Georgia and Kansas and Tennessee growing up. But they're similar at the same time, but it's not about just UMD being a bad place, because it's not. It's a great place. It's a wonderful place. But the more we can admit we have some problems, we have issues that needed to be addressed, the greater progress we felt we could make. So, what we did was to create a structure that had 3 primary parts: a campus climate leadership team, a campus change team, and 18 unit change teams throughout the campus. And these unit change teams are centered in the departments and the various units, colleges and schools. We have 5 colleges and schools at UMD. Pretty traditional in terms of structure. We have a liberal arts college, we have science and engineering, we have fine arts, we have a school of business, and we have a college of education and human service professions. So these 3 teams were the primary structure of our campus change. So the leadership team consists of me, my vice chancellors, and other senior level administrators who are our primary campus climate leaders. So the purpose of this leadership team, first and foremost, is to put diversity and campus change at the forefront of my senior leadership team. Bless you. We meet usually about twice a month, and so it forces us for an hour and a half to be totally consumed by campus climate, at least twice a month. So we provide the primary leadership, we look at proposals, we prioritize recommendations, and we allocate resources to support the campus change initiatives. We also facilitate discussions of mission, core values, goals, etc. Now, the campus change team consists of representatives from our schools and colleges and from other administrative units. We have, in addition to academic affairs, we have a division we call student life, called student affairs in some places. And then our third major unit is finance and operations. So throughout all of those areas, we have representatives on the campus change team. We also have representatives from our diversity commission. We have a commission for women, a disabilities commission, and a GLBTQA commission. So the purpose of this group is to foster development of equity and diversity action plans in the various departments and units. They also research plans with respect to their feasibility, their cost, and their timeliness. And through this process, the campus change team often makes recommendations to the leadership team in terms of where they think we need to put our focus and our resources. They also build and maintain relationships with the other campus units, campus populations, and the general community. Now, the unit change teams, as I said earlier, are located in our 5 colleges and schools. We also have representation from we do have a School of Medicine at UMD as well as a College of Pharmacy. There's representation from student life and other administrative units. And then we have some specialized components or specialized unit change teams. We have one in American Indian Science and Engineering. Since given where we're located in our population, we have a strong American Indian focus. And we have very strong science, engineering, and engineering programs at UMD. So that's a key area. We have a Social Justice Action Coalition in the College of Education and Human Service Professions, and then we also have representation from the Student Association, which is our student government group at UMD. So the unit change teams identify and develop promising practices in order to create a welcoming and inclusive campus at the unit level. And again, the more we can drive this work down to the unit level, the more successful we tend to be. Now, they recommend actions to the campus change team as appropriate, but in collaboration with their unit leadership, oftentimes they will take action simply on their own, which we encourage. So we don't force them up a hierarchy in order to get things done. So this structure is it's really more bottom up than top down, but it's probably a better way to describe it. It's almost like a web, because people are connected in different places, and the unit change teams may make a recommendation directly to the leadership team or the campus change team, or vice versa. So in order for our campus change work to be really meaningful and to be lasting, we felt we needed a structure like this to facilitate difficult conversations, to initiate changes that make a positive difference, and to hold each other accountable. Because one thing that happens when you step out with work like this is that people expect results, as they should. and they want to and they should hold you accountable for your actions. Now, another process that occurred during my first year at UMD was the development of a new strategic plan for our campus. So during the 2010-2011 academic year, we conducted a year-long systematic planning process to clarify our mission, to identify a campus vision, core values, and goals. So this new plan was a product of an inclusive and collaborative process involving the entire campus, as well as the Duluth community and business leaders. Through this process, we developed 6 major goals that have helped focus our efforts on key priorities over the past few years. Now, you've already heard reference to Goal 2. And this is Goal 2, as a way to renew our commitment to equity and diversity, to put a high priority on creating an environment that is welcoming and respectful. So Goal 2 says, create a positive and inclusive campus climate for all by advancing equity, diversity, and social justice. And I do read that one to you because this has become sort of the bedrock of our diversity work. And since it is now a strategic goal for the institution, it's another way to hold us accountable. It's another way to put the diversity work in the forefront of what we're about. Goal 2 has 8 or 9 action steps underneath it as ways to really get into the nitty-gritty of what needs to happen on campus. Action steps deal with things like increasing the numbers of underrepresented students, faculty, and staff. It includes establishing definitions of equity, diversity, and social justice, which we have now done. It also includes things like increasing the intercultural competencies of our faculty, staff, and students. So we put a lot of focus on training at UMD. Another thing that's an action step here underneath this goal is that campus leadership, in the evaluations of campus leaders on a yearly basis, they have to speak to the ways in which they address Goal 2 in their work. So we started with my leadership team. And so each year during the annual reviews, one of the questions they have to answer is, what have you done to help advance Goal 2? Well, now we have that spread throughout the institution. So all staff members now at UMD have this question on their annual review because it's a way we felt, again, to hold people accountable and make sure we were not just paying lip service to this work. So what's been the result of all this so far? Well, many of the Goal 2 action steps have been completed or are in progress. And indeed, our numbers of students and faculty and staff of color are increasing, although they're still relatively small. Over the past 5 years, students of color have increased from 7.1% of the total population to 10.4%. And then we have another about 3% of international students. Faculty of color have increased from 12.5 to 14.5, and staff of color have increased from approximately 4% to 7%. So still small numbers, but we're trending in the right direction, and we'll continue to make this a high priority. So what else have we done? Well, it's the conversations on campus, the challenging conversations, the courageous conversations on campus have increased markedly. And part of what this work has done is it has allowed us to delve into these issues in much more meaningful ways. But we realize that creating an inclusive campus is an ongoing process. And we continue to be committed to helping the campus heal from disappointing actions, while at the same time not letting setbacks overshadow all of the many accomplishments. Because we continue to have incidents that occur, in spite of our best efforts. But now at least we're better positioned to address them, to deal with them, and to move forward. But there has been progress, and actually, as a result of our accomplishments, we were proud to receive the University of Minnesota Unit Award for Outstanding Achievement in Equity and Diversity. So I'm going to pause for a second so you don't have to just listen to me talk. I'm going to show you a video that was created when we won this award, and you'll be able to see some of our people on campus speak about diversity in the work that we're doing. All I have to do is get the video started.
The following is a production of the University of Minnesota.
The Outstanding Unit Award honors transformational equity and diversity work by a University of Minnesota campus, college, department, or unit.
We are very honored to receive this award. It's a recognition of our collective campus commitment to improve the campus climate, an initiative we call Campus Change. It was very important that the outcomes of the Campus Change initiative align with the comprehensive strategic plan. We didn't want to have one set of Campus Change outcomes outside the main campus priorities and recommendations. Our success in creating an inclusive campus environment depends on the commitment and engagement of each of us, from the grassroots to the institutional leadership level. As the Reimagining Diversity statement says, we must all lead from where we are.
Everybody needs to ask, what do I think first? And put their own ideas out there in chorus, because if it's just always coming to a few people, our answers remain limited, and we might not find that critical answer we're really seeking to find.
The work of diversity and equity never ends. We have new students coming in, new faculty. We do have a responsibility to prepare students to live and work in diverse communities. One of my responsibilities is to work with the student organizations. It is critical that we engage students' perspectives and voices, hear their concerns and ideas as we continue to move forward in improving the campus climate. The students gave us many recommendations on how to improve the campus climate. It is important that we honor and value their experiences, but at the same time, as an institution, we have a responsibility to improve the campus climate.
I'm a part of a lot of different organizations here on campus that work with diversity and making the campus more inclusive.
I grew up as an openly gay individual, and I was treated unfairly and unjust for a long time. And I want to make sure that students here at UMD are not treated that way.
I would like the university to stand behind its mission on making this campus more inclusive for all staff, faculty, and students.
And something needs to be done so we get community support and really further ourselves in becoming a multicultural organization.
The Diversity Commission for the last 2 years has been working on an initiative to integrate equity, diversity, and social justice throughout the curriculum, campus-wide. A big part of that effort has been creating a resource site for faculty and staff to use in their curricular and co-curricular offerings on how can I not only integrate diverse perspectives into my content area, but also how can I, from a process perspective, reach a diverse student learner.
Our intended outcome is cultural self-awareness for faculty, staff, students, and administrators, so that they can become interculturally effective.
One of the things that we've tried to do is really understand what these big words mean. You know, what does it mean to be a diverse campus? What does it mean to have diverse practice in a classroom? What does it mean to have a diverse body of students and a contingent of faculty here?
Memphis, Tennessee is my hometown. I was in high school during the 1960s and remember very clearly the night that Dr. King was killed and the aftermath of the civil rights movement. This has shaped me quite profoundly and has certainly influenced my feelings and my commitment to equity and diversity. In terms of challenges, we are well aware that unfortunately many of our students face difficulties on a day-to-day basis in areas of equity and diversity. We're also well aware that this is difficult work that is oftentimes messy, oftentimes takes many years to address. and that unfortunately not everyone is supportive of this valuable work. Here at the University of Minnesota Duluth, we are truly honored to receive this Equity and Diversity Award. At the same time, we are well aware that there is much work to be done. Okay, so that gives you a little more sense of who we are and some of the things that we're doing. Just want to highlight a few of the other initiatives we've had related to this, and then I'll open it up to questions or discussion. One of the things we did fairly early on was to develop a climate response team, because what we were finding was that when things happen on campus, when there's a racial incident, when there's something that is detrimental to the kind of campus climate we want, oftentimes we're too slow in responding. And so we now have a team of 5 people that as soon as something occurs, they're on it. And this includes people from student life, from academics, from external affairs, from the police department, and they are now able to respond very quickly. They also regularly review and analyze how incidents were handled and provide recommendations on future improvements. We've also established a number of campus climate assessments, both surveys as well as focus groups. And as I mentioned earlier, we find that the focus groups with students are sometimes the richer way to assess how we're doing. We also are part of a University of Minnesota Diversity Pre-Doctoral Fellows Program, which has helped in the diversification of our faculty. This program takes individuals from underrepresented groups who are working on their dissertations, so they're in the final stages of their doctorates. We bring them to campus, we have them teach, we have them continue their research at UMD, and then after they finish their dissertations, we're hoping they'll stay with us. And we've had a couple stay with us. But even those who don't stay, it's a way to immediately diversify the faculty, because you're bringing people in right away that work with our students and diversify the faculty. We created a faculty fellow for intercultural initiatives. And this is a faculty member who's on a reassignment in my office. It's a cabinet level position to help us facilitate the campus climate initiatives. This person is also leading an intercultural leadership development training program, an ILD program, that's now been offered to 8 cohorts and over 140 faculty, staff, and administrators. We have a number of new academic majors and minors that focus on diversity. We have a new major in cultural entrepreneurship. We have now both bachelor and master's degrees in tribal administration and governance. We work these out in collaborations with the American Indian tribes in our area, but also in the Dakotas. This is the only program like it in the country, so we have people coming to us from Oklahoma, Arizona, to pursue this work. We have an Ojibwe elementary school education program. Ojibwe is the native language of the American Indians from our area. And our newest program is a minor in GLBTQ studies. So those are some of the things we've done academically. We've taken some actions also around the campus to improve the climate. We now have gender-neutral bathrooms mandated in all of our new buildings, and we're renovating the buildings we have. And we have a new program that starts this fall in gender-inclusive housing. So we're proud of the progress we're making, but fully realize the challenges we have to face. And as I share this with you this morning, I do not share it from the standpoint of claiming to be the expert. I'm just a chancellor who's been involved in this work for a long time. It's important to me. I think we've done some good things. We've also made some mistakes. So I don't present it to you as the ideal model, but I think it is a good model for us. And if some ways it can help you develop your own model, then perhaps we'll be successful. But, as I think about the challenges that we face and the setbacks that we've had from time to time, I'm reminded of what Dr. King said about the difficulties of achieving racial equality and freedom when he spoke to the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama, on April the 7th, 1957. Dr. King in this speech uses a Judeo-Christian metaphor that has universal applications, and I think also applies to the diversity work we're discussing today. In that speech, Dr. King was talking about freedom in Ghana when he said, "Freedom never comes easy. It comes through hard work, and it comes through toil. It comes through hours of despair and disappointment." Dr. King goes on to say, "There is no crown without a cross. I wish we could get to Easter without going to Good Friday, but history tells us we got to go by Good Friday before we can get to Easter." That is the long story of freedom, isn't it? He says, before you get to Canaan, you've got a Red Sea to confront. You have a hardened heart of a Pharaoh to confront. You have the prodigious hilltops of evil in the wilderness to confront. And even when you get to the promised land, you have giants in the land. Dr. King then said, even though the giants are there, we can possess the land because we've got the internal fiber to stand up amid anything we have to face. So today, as we focus on how we can make diversity really matter, I encourage us all to use our internal fiber to combat challenges to our goals and aspirations, to find what binds us together and not be deterred by our differences, and to work in concert together to rid our campuses and our communities of actions that threaten the inclusive, welcoming, and safe environments that everyone deserves. Thank you.